Welcome back. Google gets the green light to buy ITA software, and in return, the search engine giant will let the government review complaints that it's acting unfairly. All this comes with Google possibly facing an antitrust investigation. Joining us now is Harvard Business School professor Ben Edelman. He's been doing research on Google, and he joins us from Cambridge live this morning. So, Ben, do you consider this still an ongoing investigation, or can we start to move forward for Google, from Google's perspective, in terms of these antitrust concerns?
Well, I think the investigations are really just beginning. DOJ and FTC still deciding who's going to do the big one.
Yeah.
And of course, in Europe, the European Commission moving ahead full steam on their investigation.
But when it comes to where regulators perhaps should be concerned, I mean, are the criticisms fair surrounding the ITA deal in particular? I mean, where would the government first build its case?
The ITA deal, in some respects, you might think of as peripheral. That's just about travel. Travel is often its own little corner. The thing that causes the greatest concern, of course, is Google's dominance of search. Most users use Google Search, and Google enjoys an immense discretion to put whatever links it wants at the top of the page, all too often these days, of course, linking to its own services.
Mm-hmm. Well, with Europe, I mean, they started to voice concerns about antitrust issues, well back in the fall. How different are the investigations going to be, and how are they going to overlap?
I get the sense that the main U.S. investigation, whether it ends up being a DOJ investigation or an FTC investigation, will be thinking about the very same concerns that the Europeans flagged back in the fall, as you say, dominance of search, use of that discretion, placement of Google's own services in top positions, perhaps something about relationships with advertisers, charging too much or otherwise making life difficult for advertisers.
From your perspective, from all the research you've done, do you think Google does play fair with its competitors?
Well, there are some specific bad acts that are increasingly worrisome. You see instances in which Google seems to block competitors in some important respect. Just try starting a competing video site and hoping that Google links to you as much as they link to YouTube. Probably not in the cards.
So with the search function is where you're most concerned. You think they're most vulnerable?
That's where Google's dominance is the most striking. If you go to Western Europe, Google's market share in UK, France, Germany, Spain, you get numbers like 95%, 98%. That is a remarkable level of dominance, and it comes with some extra responsibilities. But
Google would just say, hey, we do what we do and we do it well. That's also just, behavior of consumers. It's not us trying to undercut competitors. How much of a defense do they have on that front?
That's a reasonable defense, and they'll say, of course, competition is one click away. A consumer could just go to Bing or go to some other search engine. The reality
Google's
is,
a verb, for God's sake, Like, Google is how you describe the search itself.
Indeed, and in so many countries, non-Google is just a rounding error. Even in the United States, where Bing enjoys 20-some% market share when you count Yahoo, the overwhelming majority of people use Google. Google's where it's at, and Google enjoys the market power that results from that user popularity. Should
we view this as separate and apart from some of the privacy concerns that Google's facing in Europe and here in the U.S., or do you see this all overlapping?
It's definitely linked. If there were 5 search engines, each with 20% market share, they could compete on privacy. One search engine could say, we're going to protect your data. You can count on us to treat your data fairly and to protect your privacy. But when Google has 90+% market share, they really don't have any incentive to do that.
Mm-hmm. So as you're studying this, how would you sort of inform it? I mean, what's the corollary? You can't really compare this to Microsoft's experience on the antitrust front, can you?
Certainly there are some similarities. A U.S. company with huge market share that just takes the world by storm. Network effects that make it difficult for anyone to leave. On the other hand, there are some important differences. Google touches so much more of the economy by charging advertisers. Think how much Hilton or Hyatt has to pay to Google just to have their ads at the top of the page whenever you search for any of the cities where they have properties. It's billions of dollars. In that sense, it's actually more than what Microsoft was able to get when each of us bought a new computer every year or two.
Yeah, it's such a different way of engaging with the consumer, though. But it's something we're going to have to continue to track as these investigations, as you say, continue. Thank you very much, Professor Edelman, for joining us today.